So this is my daily spoof. I start talking before they're ready for me. Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to Down to Earth with Harriet Kamek. Thank you so much for joining us. It is great to be here, even though right now they're having testimony on a whistleblower complaint in the United States House of Representatives. God save us all. And it's interesting to note because this is taking place on a day when I decided that I'm going to talk about China and their hegemony and the stuff that they are doing to ethnic peoples around the world. And I say this with all impunity because I feel as if China is taking advantage of people. I feel that while we are infighting here in America, China is doing its thing and it's hating on people who are ethnic, who are within their borders, and people who can't do any better. So I came across a story yesterday. It was on one of the networks that I follow. I was on Twitter actually, and it's on businessinsider.com. That's where the story is. And I came across the story and I was dismayed. I literally, it's one of those things. I shouldn't have picked up the phone. Just say that. I should not have picked up the phone. I should have just continued like nothing had happened. I should have continued like there was nothing going on. But instead, I had said my prayers. I was getting ready for bed, and I was beside myself. And I picked up the phone actually because today's my daughter's birthday, to select a photo to post for her birthday. And instead, my phone has its own way of talking to me, I guess. So it went to Twitter, and the first story that popped up was this, and I was like, no way. And I started reading the story, and I literally curled. So I sent a note to myself to make sure that, because next thing you know, you forget about it, and I may write it down in my notebook by my bed. But then I don't take my notebook from my bedside and walk around with it all day. And in the mornings, my life is so busy and so rushed. Chances are I probably would not have my notebook. So I sent the note to myself to come to you today to talk about this. And I want you to hear me clearly on this. China is a country that historically is known for violating human rights. I don't know that China is a place that I will ever visit, simply because they have a known history of violating human rights. I'm a person of color. I'm an ethnic minority, even here in the United States. And I view myself, and the society views me as that. And so based on my ethnic composition, I don't know that I would ever feel comfortable in China. I don't know that China is ever going to recognize people who are not Chinese. Right? And so it's questionable and of concern to me that while we're here in the US fighting amongst each other for something we already have, instead of working to preserve our democracy, to make sure that it contains, we're fighting. What we're fighting about, right? Deal with the stuff that needs to be dealt with and get on with it. Because in the meantime, China is harvesting human organs. Did you hear me? China, the country of China, is harvesting human organs. Do you know what that means? That means if somebody is in their prison, they're killing them and taking their organs and preserving it and keeping the organs. So if a Chinese citizen needs an organ neither, I'm talking about human organs, heart, lung, kidney, brains, anybody? China is doing it, and they're doing it to a specific minority. Let me tell you who they are. The Human Rights Council, the UN Human Rights Council, heard on Tuesday, just this past Tuesday, that China is engaged in widespread harvesting of human organs from persecuted religious and ethnic minorities. The specific people they have targeted are the Uyghur Muslims and the Falun Gong religious group, so some of their own people. Are you listening? And we're not attaching any kind of, we already are in a trade war with China, but does the trade war cover the fact that China is harvesting human organs? And don't say that it doesn't affect us, because I wouldn't want anybody in the United States to take it upon themselves to think that they should start harvesting human organs of minorities whom they think are powerless. Y'all don't better start that foolishness over here. Okay? All right? I am just saying. I'm just saying, right? So I want to just bring this, I just want to bring this to your attention that this is something that we need to figure out. This is something that we need to talk about. China is harvesting human organs of the Uyghur Muslims and some of their own people, the Falun Gong religious group. Now, why would China be doing that? Do they know something that we don't know? Do they have some advanced knowledge that we don't know, that that human organs, if you're perishing and you get a younger organ of someone healthier than you, then it would prolong your life, right? Of course, China has denied carrying it out, but the people say they have proof. That's a crime against humanity from religious minorities, which have been banned and widely persecuted by the Chinese government. China has admitted in the past to harvesting organs of prisoners, including religious minorities. They have admitted that, right? They have admitted to harvesting organs of prisoners. I'm struggling with this because I can't believe this. Because what this group is saying is that China, oh God, killed people to order. They were cut open while still alive for their kidneys, livers, hearts, lungs, cornea, and skin to be removed and turned into commodities for sale. The body parts were then used for medical purposes, citing extremely short wait times for organ transplants in Chinese hospitals as evidence of the practice. Oh God, save us. And I just want to leave that quiet for a little bit. So they cut people open while they were still alive to take their kidneys, their livers, their hearts, their lungs, their cornea, your eyes, and skin, and turned into commodities for sale. I just want you to know that this is happening. Hundreds of thousands of victims. This is one of the worst mass atrocities of this century. They didn't tell us how many people in particular, but it says hundreds of thousands. One is enough. Victim for victim and death for death, cutting out the hearts and organs from living, blameless, harmless, peaceable people. Organ transplantation to save life is a scientific and social triumph, but killing the donor is criminal. China says they stopped doing this in 2015, but clearly they have not stopped. Is this a form of genocide? Or is this just a crime of humanity? And I say all humanity because here in the US, we're so caught up in what's going on politically, we can't even see beyond our own borders until somebody gets the bright idea that, hey, maybe all the prisoners that are in America is something we need to look at. So before it gets crazy, let me set you all up and put you out there on record. This is in fact happening. And once it starts happening to one part of the world, guess what? There are other people with nefarious intentions the world over who begins to do this. This is a crime against humanity. And this is something that the government needs to focus on. Forget the trade war. That's just fluff and stuff made up because some people think one other group is going to make more money and another group is not going to make any money. But that's not what we really need to focus on. What we really need to focus on is what China is doing in real time. What China is doing in real time to people who can't do any better. That's what we need to focus on. Because that is the stuff. That is the stuff that everybody needs to focus on. It's just mind-blowing to me. And when I say mind-blowing, forgive me in my naivety. Forgive me in my unsophistication. Forgive me my lack of medical knowledge. But but accept my humanity nonetheless. That why on God's green earth would anyone be so wicked? This is something that we thought we got rid of with the advance of civilization. I thought we had eliminated despotic dictators who existed in the last century and who thought that it was okay to put 6 million people in a gas oven and who thought it was okay to imprison large groups of people who disagreed with them. I thought we had gotten rid of those people. Why are those people still on the earth today? Why have we allowed political systems and why have we allowed social systems that allow these kinds of people to proliferate? Not just, it's everywhere. I thought we got rid of that. I thought that when the 20th century closed, I thought that was the end of that. It's the 21st century. And here we are, still talking about a wicked leader who has risen up. And a group, when I say a leader, it usually is not just one person, right? Because he has to have someone who executes it. It might not even have been his original idea. It might be someone's idea who said, hey, we can do this and we can get away with it because all we have to do is to sort of perform some sort of ethnic cleansing, to say that they're a crime, they're against the state, create a whole public relations drama around the fact that these people have contributed to the demise of the culture. That's why you have to be careful with people who come out and say stuff like that. These people are tearing down the culture, because what that is a setup and an excuse to do bad things to people who disagree with them. People who perhaps fall outside the realm or outside the description of what they believe their society should look like. Happens all the time in human history, right? Doesn't it? It happens all the time. There are historical ways and precedents for that stuff, right? And so here you are finding that China thinks it can get away with it and is doing it and has been doing it since, according to them, they stopped it in 2015. That's according to them. But this new group, the China Tribunal, based in Britain, has actual video, I don't want to see it, of China doing it, not just to prisoners, but just taking people out of these ethnic groups and just saying, okay, we're just going to cut out your heart, your liver, your lung, right? Your kidneys, your cornea, your eyes, and take your skin off. And we're going to put it in hospitals to be used for medical purposes, or we can use it for other products of sale. So China has in fact been experimenting with human beings for a long time, that they know how they can harvest and do stuff like that. And you really still think we don't need to keep an eye on them? What if they're given an opportunity and we sit back here in the US and allow them to become a world power, that they have such power? Don't you think they would come to America and do the same thing? Don't you think if they got a chance to put their hands on our resources, that they would do it? This is why I don't trust some countries. I don't trust the leaders. Anywhere there is authoritarianism, I don't trust it. If there are no systems of checks and balances where there is another, the law allows for opposing viewpoints, I don't like that. And if you've ever asked me, am I curious about going to China? Hey, I'm a person of color. I feel conspicuous in China. And I feel conspicuous that if I go there, I could disappear and the Chinese government would never have any explanation of what happened to me. No, thank you. I'm good. Do you see what I'm saying? I know I appreciate people who run away from China, because I used to say, you guys look like, it works for you over there. I mean, you can go to school, you can be an engineer, a doctor, or whatever, even if you come from the rural parts, and they allow for some sort of autonomy. And I'm like, I knew they had problems with ethnic peoples. Like everywhere else in the world, there is a caste system based on color and based on some sort of, I wouldn't say class, but necessarily, but a sort of caste system that says if you're descended from important people, or if you're descended from people who were in power. So there's a system of the powerful and the powerless. That's everywhere human beings gather. But I had no idea that it was this endemic, that China, whom I perceive to be people of color, I think Chinese people, they might not think they are, but to me, they're people of color. If you're non-white, you're a person of color, right? That's the way, that's just the way the system, the world is structured, right? And that is changing. So now we're all going to soon be shades of brown. And then there won't be any one group who will think that they're superior because they are the only group who look like that. So as far as I'm concerned, China itself is a country of color. They're not white, right? So they're a whole country of color. So within their own systems, they found a way, like everywhere else, to say, well, I'm the superior one because I look like this, and most of the people who are with me look like this. So if you do not, then you need to go. So the Uyghurs are, China is a big country, right? They've always been like that. There have always been different ethnicities. In fact, I think it's a country that has over 300 languages. It's fascinating because there are different regions to China. But what China shows you are some light yellow skin looking people and say this is what Chinese folks look like. But there are brown skinned Chinese people and darker skinned Chinese people because they have migration and they've had migrants for a long, long time. So far out in the provinces of the country, there are people who look vastly different than the people who are in Beijing. But you would never know that because they want you to think that all Chinese people look white or near white, right? The only thing that makes them Chinese is their hair and their facial structure. That's all they want you to think about. But they're busy in the meantime harvesting the organs of people who are less than they are. Interesting, isn't it? Vastly interesting. So I want us all to think for a minute. If China were to gain the upper hand in world politics, what would that world be like? What would the world be like? I'm being calm about this because this is an outrage. We should all be sufficiently outraged. There should be sanctions handed down by the United Nations General Assembly against China for doing this. This is genocide. This is 21st century genocide. For China to think it's okay, vastly okay, to pursue people of color and people of ethnic minorities within their systems. I think it's time out for us to sit back and think these things have stopped happening. We've become too insular in the United States in recent years. I don't know if we got too comfortable and forgotten that we're a nation who is supposed, somebody has to be the watchman on the wall. Somebody has to be the watchdog. Somebody has to be able to call out other countries for their foolishness and say, this can't happen. Somebody has to be able to say, whoa, this isn't right, dude. You can't do this, not even to your own people. And the rest of us are going to call you out and we're going to hold you to sanctions until you fix that. Somebody has to say, then I'm not afraid to say because I'm a person of color. What if I had an interaction with them? What are they going to do? Cut me open, take my heart, my lungs, my cornea, right? I have 52-year-old eyes. I don't know what that would do to them, but my heart, my liver, my kidneys, harvest my organs and take my skin and do it while people are still alive. How barbaric. They do it to people while they're alive. Like, you don't hear the cries of human beings and it moves you. I want to ask the Chinese government, what kind of people are you? Are you normal? Are you human? That you don't hear the cries of human beings while you are cutting them open while they're still alive. Come on, somebody. It's time out for stuff like this. It's time for us to get off this foolishness, get with the program, and get back to being world leader that we are and start calling these nations out. What hope is there in the world if nobody is stopping the dictators, if nobody is telling other countries that you can't continue to hurt other people? What hope is there for humanity? We need to get back to our position of being the watchman on the wall. We need to get back to our position of focusing on these atrocities that are done to other human beings. Because make no mistake about it, if it doesn't happen in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or 50 years, China is waiting to take over the United States however it can. And they will do the same things to people here in America that they do to their own ethnic minorities. And you all know it's true. Do I have an agreement here? I know you think so, right? Because this is just terrible. Let me just help you out. This is a part of human trafficking. This is what I call organ trafficking. As far as I'm concerned, there are three parts to human trafficking. There's sex trafficking, there's labor trafficking, and there's organ trafficking. When I first started talking about it, other people said, no, that's not part of human trafficking. You just need to focus on the domestic servitude part of it. I'm like, domestic servitude falls under the classification of labor trafficking. What you really need to focus on is organ trafficking, because for years they've been taking poor people off the streets in India and China and harvesting their organs. But nobody wanted to focus on that, because then it would make one group of people look bad, wouldn't it? It would make it look like only rich people who could have that access would do it. So not only are rich people having sex with children, but now we don't want to focus on that. Just focus on the domestic servitude part of it, that there are other people who bring people here from other parts of the world. And I'm like, there is organ trafficking is real. And now we know why, because it is horrible. This is why, personally, I myself, you will never find me ticking off on my driver's license that I'm going to be an organ donor. No, because if something happens and I end up in the emergency room, they're not going to kill me just to get my organs and say, well, she was going to die anyway. Her blood pressure all went down and this was bad and this was bad, and she was compromised. And then my family will never know if my organs are in a plastic bag inside of my body cavity. You know what I mean? So no, thank you. No, thank you. I do not subscribe to that idea at all. The dignity. There is no such thing as human dignity. I remember when my mom died, and the funeral director explained to me, the funeral home, that he had kept her organs with her because she died at home. She died, peaceably. And he kept her organs with her. And I remember him explaining she died with dignity. He did that for me, for the family, for us to know that she went to the grave intact. Do you see what I'm saying? And I couldn't understand the importance of it at the time, because of course I was caught up in the grief and just talking about her in those very vague terms. And as a scientific part, I couldn't deal with it. But sometime after that, I began to think about the ramifications of why it was explained to me that way. And now I get it. He was attaching a dignity to it, right? And it's the kind of thing that makes you wonder, because it has made me wonder. And now when you hear this, that China is doing, you begin to wonder if something isn't going on. I'm going to have to do this show again in the evening sometime and ask other people to chime in, because I want to be able to invite comments and invite commentary from everybody else. And listen, I get it. You're probably listening to me out there, and you're probably Chinese who live here in the US, but you have family members back home and you're afraid to speak out. You're afraid to come public. I won't ask you your name, and I won't ask you to describe what region of the country you're from, because I get that you fear that the pervasive reach of the Chinese government is such that they do not like dissidents. They don't like someone criticizing them. It's personal. They're so authoritarian. You're just supposed to do as the state says. You see what you see happening here in America right now is an example of democracy. You saw it in Britain earlier, where the prime minister felt like he could do something, and the government, the courts and the people, the government around him said, no, not just because you feel like doing it are we going to let you do it. It's the same thing here in America. It's preservation of democracy that is going to survive one leader. That's what you're seeing happening now. Checks and balances. No, you overstepped your authority. Wrong. We're checking you. No, you shouldn't have done that. This is how we correct the anomalies that exist in people's character when they become leaders. Do you see what I'm saying? So there is a system of checks and balances. And it is good for our democracy. That's democracy on display. You're seeing how our democracy publicly before the whole world, we're laying it out. This is America. This is what we do. We check our systems. We check our leaders. And the leader is saying, yeah, you know what? I probably said it and I probably did it and I'm wrong. Help me out. I didn't know. Do you see what I'm saying? But this is how we do it. Man, that was so wrong. We shouldn't have done that. But instead, in some countries, and especially in the country I'm focusing on, China, this is what they do. So what are they going to do now? Send a virus to my systems and show me getting dressed and show me being naked? You probably would help me. I have nothing to hide. Do you see what I'm saying? Because they don't like dissidents. It's the craziest thing ever. And a lot of people who come from China who live here do not ever get involved in the politics because they're afraid. The system of authoritarianism and power was such that it transcends even borders. Even when they leave the country, they won't say anything. It might take their children to stand up, but they're not touching it. And they will even tell their children, don't say anything. I'm saying it. It's wrong. China, you're wrong, dude. You're wrong. I can't tell you, I'm not going to tell you that that was a good thing to do, but to do it while people are alive, you couldn't even wait till they died and then say that they signed a consent order saying their bodies could be donated for science. You did it while they were alive. You cut somebody's eyes out and cut their heart out while they're alive. So they're like an animal to you. They're not human. I'm speechless. My friends, I'm totally speechless. I'm speechless. And I want you all to think about it. I need you all to stand and to deal with this because this is not enough. We got to do better than this. We got to do better. I need to sip some tea. Because this is an outrage for me. I was so disturbed when I read that last night. I was like, did I say my prayers before? Should I say my prayers again? That was me last night because I was like, I couldn't even read the article in its entirety because I was scared and I was afraid that it was going to describe in detail. And it did. I had to wait until this morning to read it because I'm like, I don't want to go to bed thinking about this. And this is why you need to know. It's not enough for you to read just about the entertainment news. I know it's football season and I'm all caught up in it and so on. You can't just read about the personalities around it. You've got to read the news of the day because you have to read it to be informed. But what do you do with that information? You make sure you look at the people whom you're going to elect. Here in America, we have an election in 2020. And you want to know what they think because you have to ask yourself, could such a thing happen to your country? And you have to examine people and you have to get to know them. Right? It's the most incredible thing ever. In recent times, I have not read anything as disturbing as what I read this morning. And I know of some serious cases in human trafficking that have totally dismayed me. But this is new. And this affected me on a whole other level to think that China, a whole country, a whole system, this is not just some one random guy somewhere out there in left field somewhere who has this weird idea. This is somebody, right? We got to talk about it. Join me again. This is Harriet Kemick on Down to Earth, right? And we have got to be able, if you're just joining me, this is part 2 of our conversation on why China is pursuing ethnic minorities and harvesting their organs, the process as outlined in a report to the United Nations this past Tuesday, in which it describes China and alleges that China group practice was first brought to the attention of the world in 2015, and where people found an investigation found that China was killing prisoners and harvesting their organs. But China said that it had stopped the practice in 2015. Well, a group out of London, England, has found that to not be true, that China is in fact doing this today with ethnic peoples in their own lands, and that they're providing, there's a short wait list in China for organ transplants, and that they are taking the skin off people's bodies while people are alive. And I say all of that to say we have to be careful when instances like this occur and we don't call attention to it. We have to be really, really careful about it. Now, China is a system of is a dictatorial system. It's a system of authoritarianism. There's one guy, there are no elections. It is what it is. They get together and they just appoint some guy and that's it. Right? And so China is not somewhere where people can actively get up and say, I don't agree. You see what's happening in Hong Kong in recent times. Well, Hong Kong for the last 120 years was freed, but the British had signed a lease to occupy Hong Kong from China for 99 years. Well, that 99-year lease, much to everyone's chagrin, actually came to pass and expired in the year 1999. So people were in a rush to get out of Hong Kong. So the people who are left in Hong Kong do not want to become a part of mainstream China, mainland China, because of the authoritarianism that exists. So they have been demonstrating and hiding their faces. And then you notice how the media over here stopped reporting it, because people were actually showing wearing masks on their faces because China has perfected the technology that is facial recognition. So people were tearing down the posts in the street where China had erected facial recognition technology to capture the faces of people so they could go get those people who were demonstrating and wanted freedom to kill them. So people were demonstrating with masks on their faces. They turned their phones off, took the SIM cards out so they couldn't be traced. That was what was going on during the Hong Kong riots. We probably weren't paying much attention to it because we were caught up in our own activities and our own events over here. So now China has been doing stuff for so long, they've gone unchecked. And who really knows what's going on in China? Because they don't exactly allow you to come in and say, hey, come on into my country and investigate me. It's not like the United States that says, we have a system for you to come in. Here is the criteria. You meet the criteria, you come in. And the system to enter the United States is pretty lax in terms of, well, if you're a known dissident, they're not obviously not going to let you in if they think you're a problem to the state. But by and large, they're like, hey, everybody, come on over here. Come visit us. Come go to the Statue of Liberty. You want to go to Hollywood, or you want to go to Disney. That's America all day. America is this one big Disneyland, right? America is a fairy tale. Okay? So people all over the world have aspirations to come to America, because who doesn't want to live in freedom? Who wants to live under a dictatorial system? Nobody ever. Everybody wants to be free to have autonomy over their own lives and to have autonomy over the choices they make that affect their lives. That's what America is like every day. That's why sometimes Americans find it very hard to digest these kinds of authoritarian policies. They're like, what are you talking about? When they talk about being a dictator, they're like, huh? You call that being a dictator, man? What are you talking about? And so we have to be schooled by people from other lands on what to look out for. Because we're like, no, I don't identify with that. I don't think that's a right thing to do. Americans, I have found most Americans have an inner sense of justice, a sense of social justice and a moral compass that kind of guides them to say, that's not right. And that's an injustice that should be corrected. And how do I correct it? Do you see what I'm saying? That's how most Americans are. Like, they're passionate about it. They're like, no, I don't think I like that because it does not protect the rights of the individual. I think people should have certain autonomy over the choices they make affecting them. That's why we have choices in healthcare and choices in everything, right? Choices in where you live, choices in what cars you drive, where, what kind of, who are your doctor, who's your doctor, and so on. You get a first opinion, you don't like it, go get a second opinion, right? So Americans tend be to be raised upon the system of this social justice, the system that justice will prevail regardless. Most countries in the world don't think like that, right? And so, for most countries in the world, they tend to view justice as a afterthought. Or justice looks like me. What I say is what goes. That's justice. Except in our own homes in America, where the parent is like, this is justice. What I say is the law of the land, the law of this land right here, the law of this land. I have law over you. That's what we say to our children. So when you turn 18, you have autonomy. Until then, this is my law. You live according to my dictates. I'm saying that because my children who are listening are laughing, because they're like, really, mom? And they're like, well, that's kind of how they grow up anyway, right? But outside of that, when it comes to national politics and local, regional politics, that's how we conduct ourselves on a system of democracy. America is based on a democratic system where people are free to elect the leaders whom they choose. Well, whether you like some guy's personality or not, or you like some girl's personality, you have a right to choose whom you want to be with. That's the system that prevails in America. That's not true everywhere else. It certainly doesn't seem to be the system in China. Frankly, I don't know how they elect a leader. Does anyone know? I don't know. Because sometimes it's the same person for what, 20, 30 years? Then you just hear they appointed another guy and you're like, okay. So that kind of system lends itself to people taking advantage of the power, right? It lends itself to people feeling that they're more powerful than others. So they're going to find ways in which they can control those people and direct those people, wouldn't you say? And so we find ourselves right smack dab in a system where China is harvesting the organs of ethnic minorities, killing them while they're alive. If you are not outraged, I don't know what is wrong. Think about it. Wherever you are on the planet, if you're in India, Bangladesh, if you're in France, if you're in Ireland, if you're in Brazil, if you're in Nigeria, if you're in South Africa, you should feel outraged. If you're in North Carolina, if you're in Boontown, Indiana, if you're in Wyoming or Montana, if you're in Chile or Peru, you should feel outraged, because this is something that could happen anytime within anyone's border. See, the way healthcare and medicine is progressing now, we're learning more and more, and we're discovering that the vital organs, we used to know that they were integral to health and to preservation of life. But now more than ever, we're realizing that everything happens through the vital organs. So if those shut down or they become sick or infected, it's over. So replace the organ so you can continue to have life. So you have a heart attack, that heart is bad. Well, cut it out and get a new heart. Well, an animal's heart doesn't work in a human's body, does it? But a human heart does. So find a human heart to replace the one that you had to take out. Do you see where I'm coming from? And so now organ trafficking became a thing up to 10 years ago, where people were literally being snatched off the street in some countries. Rich people were paying other people to go find organs. So they developed this market. So people at first, poor people in some other countries at first were like, well, I have 2 kidneys. I can live with one. Let me sell one. Right? And so they were doing that much to their chagrin. And now it became a whole big deal where we now refer to it as human trafficking. It's a form of human trafficking. And I've been saying it for years, but they were like, no, Harriet, no. And now you see you see the evidence of it. And it does not feel comfortable, and it shouldn't, because we have to recognize and we have to keep in mind that these kinds of things can't continue to happen. These kinds of things must be stopped at the roots so it does not progress and become a problem for humanity. We do not need another Nazi. We do not need another Nazi leader like Adolf Hitler rising up and dictating and keeping a whole region of people under subjection to wicked policies. We don't need another atrocity of humanity to exist. We're in modern times and we need to act modern. We need to act as if there are people. We need to act as if this is something that is affecting all of us. So I just say to you, if you have a social media page, I'm going to share the story from Business Insider. And I want you all to think about it and share it, this knowledge. Start having this discussion right there on your social media page. Just start saying, hey, look, what's happening in China? They're harvesting organs. Talk about it. We need to start talking about the conversation so people know. And what about those people? Right? They don't have access to social media. The people who they don't have access to social media. They don't have access to any media. They don't have access to any means to communicate how they feel. They don't have autonomy of their political choices. Right now, here in America, in the United States, you can see our democracy on display. You can see adults disagreeing with one another, but doing it so under the law, within the Constitution, in a manner that nobody at the end of the day is going to pick up a gun and shoot anybody. In fact, they're probably, after this is over, they're probably going to call each other and say, hey, man, let's go have a drink and forget about it. It's politics. Do you see what I'm saying? What you're seeing is democracy on display. That these are basically human beings who have a sense of moral compass and a sense of decency to say that something is wrong and we need to fix it. That's the stage where we need to get back to that. We cannot continue to have loose individuals in countries that are leading countries that can do whatever they feel like doing. It can't continue to happen. We have to be the watchdog on the wall. America, come back, come back, come back, come back. We got to get back to being the watchman on the wall. We got to get back to being the leader who says this is wrong. We've become so wrapped up in our internal policies lately that we are not looking at who we really are and what we represent. We've forgotten. We've really forgotten that we need to be the ones who say, stop. They're helpless people. Stop. And most Americans, you're all nodding your heads, and most Americans are like that. They're like, this is an injustice. I'm one of those persons I'm an observer of people. And I like to see, for me, when things happen here in America or around the world, it's encouraging me to see people saying, this is wrong and we have to fix it. And I'm like, look at that, a sense of social justice, a moral compass that says this is a wrong that has to be righted. I applaud that. And the fact that we live in a system and a society that lends itself to being able to do that is all the more reason that we should not take it for granted, and we should use our position, and we should stand up and say, China, you are wrong. Stop harvesting organs, stop harvesting humans, and stop killing innocent people just because they don't look like you and they don't sound like you. It's wrong, China. It's wrong today. It's wrong every day. And we're not going to support that. And not only are we not going to support it, we're going to tell you to your face that you're wrong. My name is Harriet Cameron. Come look for me. What you going to do? Sell me a bad laptop someday? What you going to do? You can't touch me. And when I say you can't touch me because when you look at me, you know you're wrong. And neither can you dismiss me as being insignificant because I don't belong to the ethnic minority in your country that you're persecuting. But I do have power. It's the power of my voice. It's the power of my fingers to tweet at you on Twitter that this is wrong. And America is going to tell you in just a few. You wait. When we are done with what we're going through in Congress right now, we're going to take care of it. Because as far as we're concerned, now, this should not happen, right? This should not happen at no stage of the game. My friends, I leave you with this thought today. Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And he said, love will shine a light on hate and cast out hate. And I never believed that I could ever agree with those words as much as I agree today. On this day, having read this report on what China is doing, I am now convinced that if we need love, if we thought we needed love for one another and love for human beings, that time is now. If we don't stop this, we don't need another Adolf Hitler. We don't need another system that is going to advance and mobilize to take over the world just because they feel that they should rule because they think they're right and they want to control. Not any day. That's not how this works. You enter into politics because you feel that there's a contribution that you can make to change something. You see something and your own sense of social justice kicks in. That's the reason. That's the reason most people do. They feel like they can make a difference. So, my friends, we got to stop human trafficking. And we definitely got to stop organ trafficking because it's only a matter of time before it becomes more pervasive, where whole countries who can't afford to feed their people, provide clean water and energy for their people, find their people start disappearing just because. So I want to ask you right now, how do you feel? I want to ask you to make a difference. I want to ask you to think on these things. I'm going to post a link to my Twitter page and I want you to read it. And I want you to think about it. And I want you to do something about it. I want you to start the conversation. Don't just dismiss it. Don't get caught up in the news of the day and forget that this is something that impacts all of us because it could happen anywhere. It could happen anywhere. Here in the US, lots of people. Have you ever wondered what happens to people who are missing? Why are so many people missing? Why are so many people showing up missing all the time? Have you ever wondered? Now you begin to see why this is a matter of concern because we really don't know where they are. We don't know where they ended up. We've never seen their bodies. Their bodies are not returned to their family members. So we don't know what has happened to them. We got to start thinking and we got to start looking into these things and finding ways to prevent this from happening here. We got to take action. And I am asking you and depending on you to take action now by tweeting and going on social media to tell everyone about what China is doing and what the possibilities and ramifications are. I thank you so much for listening to me this morning. Thanks so much. For more information on what we do, go to harrietkamick.com. You can find me anywhere on the web. Listen to my podcasts on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, anywhere, any favorite of your favorite podcast platform. You'll find that we are represented. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for joining me this morning. I want to say thank you to everyone and to all those who made this possible. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.